Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the changing debate and discussion. I've done a sort of made a couple of references to this over a few videos over the last several days, but the changing nature of the debate or discussion, which is all globalist driven, propaganda driven, about mass migration. There's a lot of views being expressed, sort of negative views, say, well, look at all these illiterate, low IQ peasants that are coming into the West. How can they be of benefit to any economy, whether it be the West or the third world country they come from? Why are we bringing in the West? Why are we bringing these people in when they can make no contribution? Now, to make a contribution in a first world economy, you have to be able to speak the language, and you have to have at least a basic education, and at least say I don't know, 10 years at school, eight to 10 years at school as a minimum. But anyway, these are the quality of migrants coming in. That there's the propaganda is that they're all doctors and engineers and rocket scientists and so on, which is utter nonsense. And the amount of illiterate Chinese peasants, that are here, or other people, coming from India and so on. Any migrant that comes from the third world is going to be straight away suspect. If they come from the peasant class, then they're going to be of no use to the first world economy. If they come from the wealthy class, where all jobs are allocated, based on monopolies and oligopolies and social prestige and things like that, and all these third world countries, bribery and corruption is just a way of life. So even if you come from an elite group in the first world, in the third world rather, or the family business exists as a monopoly. You're not competing with anybody. Business money just rolls in the door. You've got monopoly control over supply and pricing and so on. You bribe local officials to make sure that you don't have to abide by the laws of various laws. It could be laws to do with hygiene. It could be laws to do with dumping waste in the river or something like that, or exploiting labour, or not paying them, or mistreating them. Your children get sent to the girls you send to university not to get an education, but to find a wealthy husband and to have the social life with other people in the Brahmin class. If you've got a son, then he goes to university again for the social prestige status, and if your son's an idiot, then you just bribe the lecturer or the college to give him the degree, with the triple PhD with high distinction type outcome. So he's got that sort of family prestige. Or you send them to an overseas university. And the Indian, if you're paying big money to go to a Western university, which is solely for social prestige, those people aren't going to study, for goodness sake, or to learn something. Then they'll be quite clear. Look, we're paying big dollars I'm paying big dollars to send my son to your university, and I expect a fucking degree and a PhD at the end of it. If there's any doubt over that, if you're going to actually grade my son on a merit basis, then I'll just take my son out, and I'll make sure that a number of my friends and acquaintances take their children out as well. It'll cost you millions but if you do what I want, then not only will I leave my son there, but he'll stay on to do a doctorate at $200,000 a year, and your university will do very well to this. Thank you. So those scams are going on. So the first world people aren't much use, as in the elite class aren't much use either. Now there's in these third world basket case countries, there's a tiny upper middle class, but they're usually only allowed, within the proximity of power and prestige, if they're good little stooges and flunkies. There'll be a small elite that really are capable. They really did their hard work, and there'll be some of those, but not very many. And as I've mentioned a number of times before, out of the current crop of mass migration to Australia. Even the government privately admits, they don't publicise this, privately admits that at best, 5% of the migrants are useful to the Australian economy. And that's a generous consideration. We're probably closer to 3 in reality, 3%. So out of the 400,000 that migrants that came to Australia last year, somewhere between 10 and 12,000 would be useful, and that'll be it. Now, some may grow to be useful, worthwhile migrants. Others may have children that'll become worthwhile. But you need to understand too that the extent to which the Western economies are being reordered by this mass migration. There's a vast takeout food sort of industry that's now wholly dependent on importing third world peasants from the rural areas of India and China. Those businesses wouldn't exist without it. So they've detached from market forces. If they had to pay the money, if they had to pay the money for work, the right wages, and they had to pay the proper conditions and allowances and rates and all that sort of thing, and where they source their products from, that they saw the Chinese restaurants source from other Chinese farms in a closed sort of shop type thing. So they just cut out all the local businesses, or many of them, so that the Chinese restaurant only buys from the Chinese-owned farms. It only employs people through Chinese labour firms, and so on and so on and so on. And so they've become completely detached from the market economy and from the local economy. Everything they buy, everything they do is another Chinese company that's set up to supply it. So there's no market forces operating at all. And they're packing people 20 to a 2-bedroom apartment as worker drones for their restaurants and their takeout food shops and so on. Same could be for nail painting salons and that sort of thing. Peasant girls brought out from the interior, or even there have been chains of like coffee shops and so on that the Russian mafia own, and they use that as a front for prostitution as well. Oh fuck! So these things are what go on. So why would you bring those sort of migrants to come into? Not only are they illiterate peasants, but they're rorting the system. They're setting up micro economies within the economy, micro ethnic states within the state, and so on. So this is clearly, in my view, clearly not working. It's a disaster of the first order, and it's artificially affected all things that we do in this country. And also they bring with them the third world sort of very deeply entrenched habits of bribery and corruption. So, school teachers I know that are the Chinese and Indians will come and go, hey, you make sure my kid comes first in the class and there's $5,000 in it for you. These sorts of things, and they're constantly getting that, or they're being offered, a free month of prostitution services at the brothel that the Chinese guy owns if he makes sure that his son comes first in the test, or gets a good grade, and so on. It just goes on. And so instead of us in the West sort of de-corrupting them, it's the reverse. They have corrupted us, including, by the way, corruption is now an accepted way of doing things. And when you look at, say, quota systems for race and gender and transgender, that sort of thing, it's just another form of that corruption, which devalues all merit, and so that the economic decisions and business decisions and resources are allocated based on this corruption rather than on any meritorious standard. Now, coming to this change in the sort of national or the debate around mass migration that's happening, in my perception is there's a subtle change going on here. I think the globalists sort of accepted that the mass migration scam, and it's a fucking scam of the first order, isn't going to fly for much longer. So they're going to try and rebrand it in one sense, but also I think they're trying to sell it as well. Okay, so we don't bring third world peasants out who are illiterate in their own language. What we do is we bring out the very best. So everyone we're going to bring now is going to be a doctor and an engineer and a rocket scientist, as if the third world is thick with engineers and rocket scientists. That seems to be where they're trying to go. They're going to rebrand mass migration as just simply. Now, again, when you go to the third world, the people who've got the money, they just buy engineering degrees. If they know that an engineering degree will get them into the West, then they will just buy their children, who've got the money, will just buy their children an engineering degree. There'll also be labour hire scams where they'll artificially give people labour hire, give them engineering degrees to say they've got it at some third world, Ouagadougou university, and then they'll send them to the West with the whole idea that they'll bring out all the relatives and the entire village and so on. So even that's a scam. And these contrivances. So you can't rely on any independent standard. And you see this with the amount of doctors from the subcontinent and dentists and so on who arrive in the West, and the large number of complaints of malpractice. And then they do a thorough investigation and find that the person has either got no degree at all or had no tenure at a hospital in India or some third world country. Or they did have a degree, but they just purchased it through corrupt means from some university and never actually did the work. And now some of these people are supposed to do bridging courses or competence sort of exams. But even here, there's a lot of bribery and corruption. A lot of people doing the competency or administering the competency exams are themselves third world people who are more than willing to accept a bribe of $10,000 or something to go, yeah, okay, no, you're fine to go and be a doctor. You go and operate on all those white heathens, and you better learn quickly or else. So they end up getting found out, or many of them get found out after a while. Now, again, as I've mentioned previously, I've got an elderly and partially infirm relative who I take to the doctors, and whenever I come across a third world doctor, which is often now, then I'm sort of, I'll go in with her and make sure that the doctor understands what the question is and that she understands the answer, and sort of act as almost an interpreter in some ways, but making sure that, but every doctor I've seen, none of them appear to be competent, certainly by my estimation, and they just stick to a checklist of what to do. Patient comes in, says got a headache, here's some aspirin, that, and it's very simple and very, very basic, and they don't seem to know what they're doing. Now some must, and some speak better English than others. Some, their English is so poor that some have a huge chip on their shoulder. This Pakistani doctor that was took her in and took the relative into, and you get allocated doctor, you don't get a choice, and he had this huge chip on his shoulder. So when I tried to sort of question what he was doing so I could understand it, because he just wanted to make issue these sort of decrees. Yep, do this. And I said, no, doctor, why are you saying that? What do you believe is the issue here? And he thought an outrage that somebody would question his godlike judgment. But if you want to have a doctor that speaks English or see a white doctor now, you have to pay like a penalty fee or an extra fee. So you got to pay like an extra $50, or it depends on where you are, but an extra $50 to see a white doctor. Or if you want to make an appointment to see a doctor, you have to pay. Or you get allocated some third world doctor that barely speaks English. It's your choice. We're not telling you what to do. It's your choice. But if you want to see a doctor that speaks English, you got to pay for it. I think that's the direction of where we're heading with medicine generally. If you want quality medical advice, then you have to pay. If you're going to do it on the taxpayer purse, then you're going to get allocated. But if you're a third world migrant, you can say, no, I only want a doctor that speaks my language, or you have to provide an interpreter, and the taxpayer pays for that as well. I mean, why would you import people that don't speak the language? I mean, it's insane. But this comes back to now the argument is, well, what if we get a better quality migrant? We get people who speak good English, they have verifiable credentials, as in they do have the engineering degree or the medical degree or the rocket science degree or whatever. If they do have these verifiable credentials that have been intensively and exhaustively verified, we just bring them in. Now, I happen to agree with something. I think that an urbanized person who lived in the cities all their lives, they've lived a meritorious lifestyle in as much as they've passed the exams, they've met the independent criteria, they haven't bribed anybody to get their degree. They get tested when they come to the West, and tested independently on a merit-only pass or fail basis. All this sort of stuff. Then obviously we would get a higher quality of migrant, but then the numbers would drop drastically. Instead of being able to import 400,000 people into Australia, migrants each year, they would be able to bring in, under those sort of standards, 10,000 maybe. Because if you're doing really well in your own country, other than for prestige and bragging rights, why would you want to go to another country? I wouldn't. I mean, if I was doing really well, why would you want to go? So the people who are doing really well, who have the social connections, the upper class, like the Brahmins in India, they'll have monopoly-owned businesses. They'll be bribing the crap out of everybody, and so on. Why would they want to leave? So there's only a tiny proportion in those third world countries that are who are bright and meritorious and independently capable, who want to go to another country and assimilate and integrate and become part of the Western nation. So it's a very small proportion of those people. So when you look at in Britain, you'd probably get 25,000 maybe coming in, migration. Australia, 10,000. Now, this is the complete opposite of what the globalists want. They want mass migration. So they just have to refashion the argument so that every illiterate peasant from Afghanistan is actually a doctor and engineer, which is really the scam they're trying to pull at the moment. So I think they're just trying to rebrand mass migration as mass migration of rocket scientists, and tell the most terrible lies or just simply lower standards. A rocket scientist is defined as anybody who can draw a circle on a bit of paper as well. Rocket scientist. That's it. So I think they're trying to rebrand it, and again, but it'll be done with the typical globalist touch of maximum deceit. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.